Ma'am, I'm gonna ask you one last time. Pack your stuff and move. The voice came from a uniform. The authority in his tone wasn't earned. It was assumed. Clara Jennings sat on an upside-down milk crate. Her back curved slightly. Hands wrapped in worn gloves. A stack of newspapers neatly folded in front of her, each one marked Voice of the Street. Sir, she said, I'm not blocking anyone. You're on transit property. I'm on the sidewalk. Don't split hairs with me. She looked up calm, not combative. Then don't split rights with me. A second officer approached. You can sell papers somewhere else. Is there a statute posted? Don't get smart. Too late. The first officer stepped closer. Name? Clara. Clara what? Jennings. Do you have ID? Do you have cause? The second officer laughed. Lady, this ain't a courtroom. Clara tilted her head. That's unfortunate, because you just violated my 4th and 14th. All right, that's it. They reached down, grabbed her elbow. She didn't fight, but she didn't collapse either. As they lifted her, the crate fell. So did her papers. A wind caught one and carried it past a child watching from a bus window. The title read, Justice Begins at Street Level. The cuffs clicked. I'd like to speak to an attorney, Clara said. You'll get your call. I'll need 2, she added. Why? Because I'm the first one. Say what? I am an attorney, or I was. Bar number 419,376A. They paused. You expect us to believe that? I don't need you to believe, she said. I need you to verify. You some kinda activist? Clara turned slowly. Number. I'm the one who filed Jennings versus Fulton County Jail, 2002. You can look it up. I wrote the writ. I argued it in federal court. I won. The officers stared. One reached for his radio. The other looked down at the woman in cuffs. Wrinkled coat, broken shoes, hair tied in cloth, and started to wonder, what if she's telling the truth? But by then, she was already in the back seat. And the next chapter of justice was already being written. In the back of a patrol car, by someone they thought was no longer part of the story. Before the sidewalk, before the milk crate, before the second-hand gloves and the unspoken pity, Clara Jennings used to wear heels that echoed through federal courthouses. She wasn't loud. She was fluent. In the language of statute. In the silence of judges who underestimated her until she opened her folder. She graduated top of her class from Howard Law, 1,984. First in her family to pass the bar. She didn't join a firm. She joined the fight. Civil rights. Prison reform. Housing discrimination. She wasn't the lawyer who smiled on television. She was the one who read 900 pages by candlelight and showed up in court with a highlighter and a hurricane of logic. In 2002, she won Jennings v. Fulton County Jail, a landmark case that forced the city to change how inmates were medically treated during intake. It made the news. Briefly, but in certain corners of Atlanta, her name became shorthand for, they don't get away with it anymore. She mentored students, wrote op-eds, was invited to teach, and then, life did what it does. Her mother got sick. Clara left practice to care for her. 2 years later, her mother passed. Then came the foreclosure. Then a diagnosis of her own. Autoimmune. Debilitating. The savings dried up. The friends stopped calling. The bar license expired. And just like that, the woman who helped rewrite parts of Georgia legal history was folding herself into public libraries, public benches, and finally, the streets. But not bitterly. Not broken. Clara didn't beg. She sold what mattered to her most. Access to truth. So she created Voice of the Street, A 4-page newsletter she wrote by hand, copied at the public printer, and sold for 50 cents. Each issue covered a different topic. Tenant rights, what to say during a police stop, what disorderly conduct really means. No ads, no editorials, just clarity. People deserve to know the rules that will be used against them, she once said to a student at the park. And for years, she stayed under the radar. Not because no one cared, but because Clara never told people who she used to be. Until one Thursday morning, a young officer told her she didn't look like someone who knew her rights. And she replied, "I didn't lose my memory just because I lost my address." The station was quiet. Not the good kind. The kind of quiet that makes people assume you don't have anyone coming for you. The kind reserved for people the system calls temporary. Clara sat on a hard bench, her wrists red from the cuffs. Her coat folded beside her. Her bag of newspapers tossed under a desk, pages bent and dirtied. A young officer approached with a clipboard. Name? Clara Jennings. Address? None at the moment. He paused. Phone number? Also none. He sighed. All right. Loitering, failure to comply, obstructing pedestrian traffic. You left out unlawful detainment. Excuse me? You didn't inform me of the charge before placing me in restraints. That's a violation of Section 2-93, subsection B of your department code. He blinked. You memorized that? I wrote part of it. What like you drafted? The Advisory Review Committee in 2004, under Councilmember Daniels. Look it up. He looked at her, really looked. There was something in her voice. Not defiant. Just exact. You'll get your call, he mumbled. I'd like to make 2. You're not entitled to 2. I'm not requesting 2 for myself, she said. The first is to legal aid. The second is to the law review editor at Fulton University. They're printing next week. I'd like to offer them a first-hand perspective. He didn't reply. Another officer entered, older, bulkier. What's she doing here? Selling papers. Didn't want to move. The older man stepped forward. Lady, you think you're above the law? No, Clara said. I think I helped shape it. He snorted. Sure, you and who else? Me and Justice Marcus J. Elliott. Federal Circuit, retired. I clerked under him in '86. Would you like his number? The younger officer flipped through the intake form. She says her name's Clara Jennings. The older one paused. His brow tightened. Wait. Jennings? Like Jennings versus Fulton County Jail? Clara nodded. One and the same. The room went still. You're telling me we just cuffed the woman who wrote the doctrine on our medical intake policy? That's me. But that case was what, 20 years ago? 22. I may have lost a home. I may have lost income. But I didn't lose my brain. Or my bar number. The older officer backed up. Rubbed his chin. We need to verify this. You can, Clara said. Or you can keep me in holding and see what the story looks like. When it hits the evening news. That was the moment they realized they hadn't detained a vagrant. They'd detained a precedent. You've got 5 minutes on the phone, the officer said. Clara took the receiver. Dialed slowly, she didn't need to check the number. It was still memorized. Fulton County Legal Aid. This is Maya speaking. Maya. It's Clara. A beat. Jennings? Yes. Where are you? Zone 3 Precinct. Holding. Are you? Fine. But I need you to do 2 things. First, call the bar. Confirm 419,376. A is still valid for inactive emeritus status. Second, call the editor at Fulton Law Review. Tell her I have a first-hand piece. Title, When the System Forgets Its Builders. Clara. No panic, Maya. Just documentation. She hung up. The officer blinked. You call the bar? Didn't stutter. Moments later, a sergeant entered. He didn't say a word, just handed over a folder. Inside, court transcripts from 2002, her bar file, a 2014 local op-ed titled, "Why I Still Believe in Due Process, Even When I Sleep Outside." He looked at her. "You really are her. What gave it away?" "The tone," he muttered. "Most people yell when they're right. You just explain." Explaining is the only thing I never lost. Another officer leaned against the doorway. "So what now? We're just supposed to let her go?" Clara stood. "You never had me, officer. Detention without charge violates the Fourth. Your intake procedure violated Miranda. And your sidewalk ordinance? It's civil, not criminal. Which means the cuffs were fear, not enforcement." The room went still. The sergeant took a step back. "You're not going to sue?" Clara shrugged. "You assume I'm here for compensation. What if I'm here for demonstration?" A young officer, mid-20s, nervous, finally spoke. "Ma'am, why didn't you just tell us who you were from the start?" Clara turned to him. "Because the people you'll meet on this job, the ones without credentials, without business cards, without titles, they still deserve the same respect you just gave me. If the system only works when it recognizes a name, then it doesn't work." He looked down, said nothing. Clara walked to the desk, retrieved her bag, picked up a paper. "Still want to arrest me for distributing public knowledge?" "No, ma'am." "Good. Then maybe next time you see someone sitting on a milk crate, you'll ask what they know, before assuming what they don't." She stepped outside. The air hit her skin like a verdict. A few feet away, the young officer followed. "Miss Jennings?" She turned. "Yeah? Do you still teach?" "Every day," she said. "The problem is, most people don't realize they're in class until after the test." The clip was only 42 seconds long. No screaming, no swinging, just a woman calmly saying, "I didn't lose my memory just because I lost my address." It started with a student journalist, someone who had once bought a copy of Voice of the Street and remembered the name Clara Jennings. She tweeted the clip with a caption, "Atlanta just arrested the woman who wrote the legal doctrine they teach in year 2. It exploded. Professors chimed in. Former clients. Law students across the country. Then came the headlines. Civil rights pioneer mistaken for public nuisance. The legal legend living on a sidewalk. When the system forgets its builders. Within 24 hours, the mayor's office issued a formal statement. "We are conducting a full internal review. The city regrets any distress caused to Miss Jennings." But Clara didn't want apologies. She wanted accountability. The next morning, her Voice of the Street sold out in 3 hours. Someone scanned it and uploaded the PDF. It hit 1.2 million downloads in a weekend. Universities started emailing. Bar associations. Even a senator's aide called, "Miss Jennings, would you consider advising our committee on procedural reform?" Clara responded the same way to all of them. "Come to the bench behind the bus stop. Bring coffee. Bring humility." At the same time, the arresting officer, Sergeant Wellerwas, called before a review board. Not for brutality, but for blindness. A reporter asked him, "How did it feel to put cuffs on someone who once reformed the very department you work for?" He stared at the mic. "Like I failed a pop quiz on a class I didn't know I was in." Clara didn't smile when she heard that. She just nodded. Because sometimes, the most dangerous weapon isn't hate. It's forgetting. A week later, she was invited to speak at the Fulton Law School Hall. The dean offered a limo. She declined. Took the train. She walked on stage in the same coat. Same cloth-bound hair. No slides. No podium. Just a folding chair. She looked out at a sea of students in suits, eyes wide, fingers poised over laptops. "You don't need to type this," she began. "Just feel it." Then she told them about how the law forgets its own when they stop being useful. about how justice should be portable, how dignity shouldn't expire with address or attire. Then she said, "I wasn't insulted when they laughed at me. I was insulted that they couldn't imagine someone like me, in these shoes, once stood in front of the same kind of room, with cleaner hair, but the same words." She finished with this: "If the law only recognizes us when we look the part, then it's not law. It's performance." The room didn't clap. Not at first. They just sat there, stunned that someone who had every reason to be angry chose instead to educate. Then one student stood, then another. And by the time Clara left that stage, every person in that room knew they'd never forget her name again. Because she hadn't just written the law. She became it. On concrete, with paper in her hands, and no microphone at all. Officer Malik Ramos wasn't the one who cuffed Clara. He wasn't even on shift that morning. But he saw the clip. And worse, he saw himself. Not in the video, but in the silence, because he too had walked past that woman. Maybe twice. Maybe 20 times. Never rude. Never cruel. Just indifferent. She was part of the scenery. The harmless regulars. The people you nod at but never ask their name. Now he knew it. Clara Jennings. The woman whose writing helped shape 3 sections of department policy. The woman whose voice he never noticed, until someone else silenced it. On his day off, Ramos walked 2 blocks from the station. Found her on the usual bench coat, gloves, stack of newsletters in a tote bag. She was drawing. Not a picture. A diagram. "It's a flow chart," she said without looking up. "Complaint to case. Civil to federal. I'm simplifying it for the folks who stop by and ask how to file." Ramos cleared his throat. "Miss Jennings?" She glanced sideways. "I know that tone. Let me guess, rookie 3 years in, still figuring out what this badge really means?" He almost smiled. "You're not far off. Badge number? 6,813. "Didn't write you up," she said. "So, clean slate." He sat, 1 bench over, careful not to invade. "I came to say I'm sorry. Not for what happened, but for the fact that I never asked your name. And I'm the one who walks this block every morning." Clara looked at him. Not angry. Not impressed. Just present. "Tell me what you saw in that video." He hesitated. "I saw power assume it didn't need proof. I saw us react out of reflex, not reason. And I saw a woman correct the room without raising her voice." Clara nodded. "That's a good start. Now tell me what you didn't see." Ramos blinked. "I don't know." "That's right," she said. "Because you didn't look. But now that you are, make sure the next person doesn't have to be me, for you to notice them." He stood to leave. "I won't forget you again." Clara reached into her bag, pulled out the latest issue of Voice of the Street. Page 3. It's about what a real apology sounds like. He took it. And before he turned the corner, she called after him. "Next time you're in uniform, don't just protect the law. Remember who wrote it." Clara never moved off that bench. Even after the news faded, even after the university offers came in, even after the policy board asked her to chair the civilian review committee, she stayed. Same gloves. Same tote bag. Same quiet reminder that not every victory needs relocation. Every Tuesday morning, a small group formed around her bench. Students, retirees, a single mom with a notepad, a teenager with a misdemeanor citation. Clara called it office hours. No sign-up, no fee. Just knowledge exchanged freely. A local nonprofit offered her an indoor space. She thanked them, then declined. "The Sidewalk is the most honest place in the city," she said. "No one here pretends to know more than they do." She revised her newsletter. added new topics. How to ask questions without sounding confrontational. What to do if you're cited while unhoused. Understanding silence as a right, not as consent. She added a quote to every front page. The law doesn't just live in books. It walks. It waits. And sometimes, it sells papers under a bridge. That quote made its way onto the wall of Fulton Law Library 6 months later. Etched in metal. Beneath it, Clara Jennings. Advocate, educator, still teaching. She didn't attend the ceremony. She said, "If I go, they'll call it legacy. But I'm not done yet." And she wasn't. Because somewhere, a 16-year-old is reading her newsletter. Somewhere, a rookie officer is thinking twice before raising his voice. Somewhere, a city is learning that power doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes, it wears wool gloves and waits for the next person who forgot, who built the very rules they think they're enforcing. Clara never needed to be celebrated. She needed to be remembered. Not for the courtroom victories, not for the articles, but for the question she forced all of us to ask: who are we overlooking right now? She didn't scream for justice. She taught it. On street corners, on benches, in silence. She didn't chase power. She protected people from it, even after they stopped recognizing her face. If her story made you pause, even for one moment, then don't let it stop there. Share this. Share it for the teachers who never had a classroom, for the women who kept the rules alive long after the courts forgot their names, for the people who fell and still chose to hold up the system anyway. At Hidden Justice, we don't tell stories because they're viral. We tell them because they're vital. Because somewhere right now, someone is being dismissed, just because they don't look like they used to. So if you're still listening, maybe you've already learned Clara's lesson, that the law doesn't always wear a robe. Sometimes, it folds paper in half, writes with a borrowed pen, and waits for you to notice.